Hi guys, my name is Sakiru, otherwise known as Megan, and today I'm gonna teach you guys how to paint in Paint Tool SAI. Alright, so starting off, you can see that my Marceline line art has basically already been completed. I'm just making slight tweaks to her line work, which should be possible for you guys if you keep your line art clean and simple. It's also going to be useful for this next step, which is a selection process that requires you to select everything outside of your lines, invert that selection, and then fill up the space inside of the lines with a base color. This is really good for making sure that you don't color outside of your lines, and it also saves you the hassle of selecting little tiny bits and pieces inside the line art, which might not always be the fastest way to go about doing things. Okay, now I have my base colors down. I can unify my colors using multiply and overlay layers. I have one dark reddish brown multiply layer, and what this does is it darkens the colors and makes them a little bit more brownish, and an overlay layer that makes the colors a little bit more saturated and closer to each other on the color spectrum. So multiply darkens, overlay saturates, and gives the colors a little bit of pop. I love adding gradients to cell shades because they create an extra depth that cell shades usually don't get you unless you add a gradient. So all I'm doing is I'm blobbing down a bunch of colors and then blurring them to create a dark to light effect. After adding in that multiply gradient for atmosphere, I make a new multiply layer on top of that layer, and I start to block in my shadows. So my shadow color is magenta purple. As a rule, shadows should be cool colors like purples, blues and violets, and highlights should be warm colors like oranges, reds and yellows. This creates a range of temperature for Marceline and makes her look a little bit more lifelike. Sometimes I lose track of my multiply color, as in the color I'm using to shade, so what I'll do is I'll stop shading, turn my multiply layer back into a normal layer, color pick that, and then continue shading. Okay, so once I'm done putting down the shadows, which I always do first in order to have a good gauge of what values I'm going to be using, I add a new layer, set it to screen mode, and I start highlights. So I'm doing the same thing, but because I don't want my highlights to be too harsh, the only places that I'm using block highlights are the hair and the eyes, and everything else is going to be a very subtle screen gradient. I make sure certain shapes like her face are brought to attention by outlining them with a new screen layer set to about 70% opacity. I make a new layer on top of my line art for the opaque white highlights in her eyes, which is one of my favorite steps. I add extra depth to the shadows by going over them again with another multiply layer and bump up the highlights with yet another screen layer. I add a final subtle overlay on Marcy's face and upper torso to highlight that part of the picture. I later slap on a static texture and set that layer to overlay to add some grunge to keep the picture true to Marceline, then quickly do up a simple background. Don't forget to add in your signature, crop the picture up nicely, and then you're done. Thank you guys very much for watching my first tutorial video. If you have any suggestions for me, please leave them in the comments, and I hope you guys enjoy. Bye!